Guys, I'm really thrilled to welcome to the podcast, a new face, Felicia Killings. She's an award-winning coach, best-selling author, CEO of the Felicia Killings Foundation. She's also the CEO of something called the Conscious Conservative Movement, a kind of national outreach group that bridges the gap between black voters and conservative politics. I've been following Felicia on social media, and I think that behind what she's saying is a very interesting and important philosophy, and I wanted to bring her on the podcast to talk a little bit about it. Felicia, it's great to meet you virtually through the studio. Tell people a little bit about who you are and talk a little bit about how you developed the philosophy that you're putting forward in your motivational speaking, your writing, and your coaching.
Well, first, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's such an honor to be here. Blessings to you and your following. I am Coach Felicia Killings, like you said, the founder of the foundation, as well as the Conscious Conservative Movement. And to answer your question, my philosophy was developed really from my father's upbringing. All we know is Black conservatism. I've only known my father to vote Republican. And back home, this was kind of an anomaly, which is pretty much typical of today's Black Republicans. But he was very much so adamant about conservatism, using conservative politics as the best solution for solving our problems. But he never taught me to disassociate from being Black. We love and appreciate the culture, the history. We can see conservatism fully represented in all the things that we do. And so for that reason, I've continued to bring that same message to my platform, The Conservative Day.
Felicia, you're saying two important things that jump out just from what you just said. Number one is that what you're saying is that although we generally speak about the colorblind philosophy, and I'm assuming that you don't have any problem with colorblindness as a matter of law, but what you're saying is that this idea that we should somehow forget who we are, to put it in a slightly different context, Teddy Roosevelt once said about immigrants, there's no such thing as a hyphenated American. And quite honestly, I don't have a problem with the hyphenated American. I mean, I'm predominantly an American, that's my citizenship, but I'm also an Indian American in the sense that that's my heritage. I'm not going to repudiate that or pretend like I need to somehow forget about that. Isn't that exactly what you're saying in the context of the African American or just the American Black community?
Exactly. What we're saying is you cannot tell us to ignore our culture, our history, and our lineage, because we're just not going to do it. We have a very rich culture, and within that history, you can find conservatism oozing out of it. So we're not going to disassociate ourselves from that. But like you said, I understand the concept of being colorblind when it comes to the law. Yes, the law should be applicable to everybody, regardless of race and gender, okay? But that does not translate into what we are seeing on the conservative side, which unfortunately, when we're talking about issues that are important to Black voters, too often conservatives will say, we'll just be American. Well, no, in our predominantly Black communities, we are experiencing some things that are pertinent to, our communities. And therefore, we're going to have to present solutions in a message, in a way that's going to minister to this particular group, which may not be applicable to white Americans in a different area or Hispanics in a different area. We have to be appreciative of what we have before us and just present conservatism in a way that's going to appeal to this particular demographic.
Debbie and I have a friend, his name is Abdul. He's originally from Senegal. He's a great guy, and he's an up-and-coming guy. He's not very political, but we finally decided that we'd invite him to one of the Republican events, like the Reagan dinner that I was speaking at in admittedly rural Texas. And he came there. He really enjoyed it, and he enjoyed, he heard me speak for the first time. But Debbie and I was talking afterward, and we said, would Abdul, an immigrant from Senegal, ever join this local GOP? And we concluded he probably would not. And so right there's a problem, because here's a guy who's potentially a great recruit for our side. So talk a little bit about what the Republican Party sort of needs to do. Are you saying it needs to create multiple tents inside the so-called big tent?
That's one strategy. I think the most important thing it can do right now is begin investing into the already established organizations like the Conscious Conservative Movement out here in Atlanta, Georgia, and throw backing behind those of us who have these actual conversations with Black voters, such as in College Park. I went there, I door knocked by myself with me and another time with my daughter, and I had some of the most engaging, wonderful conversations. And it was unfortunate that when I told them the RNC was just a block away from their house, they had no clue that the Republican Party was present there. So for me, I'm like, well, if the GOP is very serious about expanding and winning, why not make investments in organizations that are already doing the work? They don't have to create anything because obviously what they've created is not working, but they can work with the local activists like myself. In other areas like Chicago, we have a really great team out there. They can use these resources to do the door knocking and the marketing. And I'm telling you, Black voters are willing to listen, especially in this political climate where there's such distrust and animosity with Democrats right now. This is a prime opportunity to make that investment.
Let's take a pause. We'll be right back with Felicia Killings.